Hello, Lazio all over the world. Welcome to this special episode of Lazio Lounge. Lazio had this mini tour in Turkey, two games, one against Fenerbahce and the second against Galatasaray, and now they're back to Rome. In Rome, um, two interesting game. Obviously, you have to remember that Fenerbahce will play, I think, tomorrow in the Champions League, and Galatasaray will start the season next weekend. So they're probably ahead of us physically. But I thought, Alasdair, this is a good test, right? We said it. It's better to play against competitive team rather than play against Auronso or top 11 from Cadore, etc., etc. This gives you more valuable results, right? Things to talk about rather than winning 21-0 against Auronso.
Yeah, exactly. It was really good. I thought I was kind of we got from it because we were saying in the Q&A last week, it's a bit strange having two games in 3 days like that at this stage of our preparation, where obviously there's unlimited substitutes and so on, but it felt like quite a lot to ask. But I feel like we actually saw quite a lot from the team. It gave us quite a lot of talking points. The performances were certainly more competitive from Lazio's side than I expected. And on top of that, when you're talking about the games themselves, the Turkish fans were amazing because the stadiums had I don't know if they were sellouts or not, but there was a big crowd in both games and making a huge amount of noise, putting pressure on Lazio with the booing and everything. And I actually like that because I think as preseason preparation, it's great to find yourself in that kind of atmosphere because it's so unusual and it doesn't have that sleepy feel of a friendly match, which you so often get. So I think overall it was a pretty productive 3 or 4 days in Turkey.
For people who weren't aware, the before the game against Galatasaray, there was the presentation, the announcement of Osimhen, who signed his contract in in the pitch. So they were really excited. Galatasaray has a very good team, Alistair. They are really tough this season. So after what happened against Fenerbahce, I was really concerned that against Galatasaray we could have lost badly, right? For people who are not aware, we lost 1-0 against Fenerbahce and we drew 2-0 against Galatasaray. Two very different games, Alistair. Against Fenerbahce, we saw a Lazio that was really struggling. Against Galatasaray, we saw a much better team, even though it was pretty much the same starting 11, right? So we wanted to see progress, and I thought we saw that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the Fenerbahce game was a strange one to kind of try and analyze because it felt like Sarri was very much wanting to work on one aspect of the team there, which was organization and defensive kind of cohesiveness. I hope so anyway, because they hardly had any possession, didn't really create any chances, and looked totally toothless. And at that point, by the end of that game, I was thinking what we've already discussed a couple of times, which is if it's all very well if we're going back to this idea from Sarri's first spell of Lazio being a defensive first team that is then lethal at taking its chances, if that's our model of winning games, but we don't have the finishers now, and that could be a problem if that's what we depend on. So I thought it was encouraging that we saw, like you say, that development from one game to the next, where I wouldn't say the Galatasaray game is like we were peppering chances. You know, it wasn't like Baroni ball, everyone forward all the time. But certainly we saw more in terms of how Lazio are planning on attacking this season. What certainly with the Zaccagni goal, a bit of a prototype, a bit of a kind of blueprint of how a Sarri goal might look this season, I thought.
You talked about the defense. We conceded 3 goals in 2 games, but it was the one against Fenerbahce was a terrible mistake from Guendouzi. And even the first Galatasaray score, I thought Mandas made a mistake there. So we still have those issues, right? Even with Baroni last year, we conceded so many goals. But if you go and see 90%, 80% of those goals are single players' mistakes. So, do you think we still have this mentality issue when we're defending, or you saw some improvement there?
Definitely saw improvement. I mean, I think it's something that will take a bit of changing because I've said before that the transition from Baroni to Sarri isn't as big as the transition from Inzaghi to Sarri was. But I do think that is probably the biggest thing he'll have to change, is because the mentality of the team, like you say, last season was all about attacking, all about putting pressure on the opposition in their final third of the pitch as much as possible. And, not being afraid to commit numbers forward to push defenders up the pitch. Whereas Sarri's approach is very different. So I think that's something he'll work on. I think conceding 3 in 2 games against opposition of that caliber isn't too bad, especially, like you say, when you consider that at least a couple of those goals were from pretty avoidable errors. I mean, you won't see Guendouzi making that kind of mistake every week, pretty unlikely. And the corner was dreadful, but that is something you can fix. I mean, Lucas Torreira is about 5 foot tall. I don't know how he ends up scoring with a header in a crowded box of all people. And that was completely missed by Romagnoli, completely missed by Mandas. But you hope that is a structural thing that you can go and fix. And I guess on the flip side, it was nice to see us actually scoring from a set piece, okay, through an own goal. But I imagine that's a part of the game Sarri's going to be looking at carefully too. So the Torreira goal, the second one, was the only kind of normal goal conceded in those 180 minutes. And that was, like I was just laughing about before we came on, it was almost like a hangover from Marco Baroni, because it was exactly the same goal we conceded about 60 times last season. Edge of the box, curl it in, and we need to find a way of stopping those, obviously.
Yeah, we have to say that, as you were mentioning, that we didn't play great football against Fenerbahce. But on the other side, we didn't concede that much. I mean, Provedel that started the game and Mandas that came in the last 30 minutes, they didn't make a single save. So it's true that Fenerbahce had more ball possession, etc., but they didn't create pretty much nothing. It reminded me of the last year of Sarri ball, right, with Lazio. Lazio dominating ball possession, but without creating nothing. I think that is a good sign. I thought Lazio defended really well, and you can see sign of improvement. So I think Sarri started fixing our defense, and let's not forget 49 goals last year, only in the Serie A. That's incredible. But Alasdair, we didn't create pretty much nothing against Fenerbahce, and
it was a terrible game.
Yeah, Tati Castellanos, is he becoming an issue for us? I mean, he didn't score a goal so far in the friendly games. It's true. He scored against Avellino, and for me, it was never foul. But apart from that, he pretty much didn't have a chance. He didn't create nothing in these 2 games in Turkey. While Dia, when he came in the Galatasaray game, had a big opportunity. I thought that was a clear penalty, to be honest with you. But it looks more into the game, more able to create something. So, do you think
it is a worry, because it's a worry that goes beyond Tati? I think what you did see from Tati in the Gala game was where he can be really effective. That the Zaccagni goal was all set up by him dropping deep and like setting Cancellieri free, and he can be great at that kind of hold-up play, that link-up play. We know that, but that on its own, it only really works if you've then got wingers who are scoring a lot of goals, midfielders who are scoring a lot of goals, or you've got an alternative striker who can score a lot of goals. And we don't really have any of those things. Zaccagni is our only wide player who can, I guess, reliably score a decent amount of goals. Pedro has just come off this amazing season, but I don't think we can go into this one expecting that he'll do the same thing all over again. Isaacson has always struggled to be an effective goal scorer, even when he's had good form. He's not someone who's scoring loads of goals. Same with Cancellieri. So, and then from midfield, it's an issue too. We're not Guendouzi and Rovella, as good as they are, they never score. So this is a problem. I think that Lazio are probably going to end up having to find the right balance there. Sarri's not going to be able to rely on the same tactical model as before, because without a Ciro, without an Alberto, without a Sergei, I just don't think we've got the quality that we can afford to have 3 or 4 chances in a game and win matches. I just don't think it's realistic with the team we've got, and obviously being unable to improve that team, that is a bit of a worry for me.
I was surprised to see so much improvement in the second game against Galatasaray, who on the paper is a much better team than Fenerbahce, right? Galatasaray won the league for 3 years in a row. They are the favorite this year. They have a very good team. But I thought Lazio played much better. We created a lot of chances compared to the past against Galatasaray. We scored twice, which is huge. But Bashiro had a huge opportunity in the first half. In the second half, Pedro had an incredible chance. Diaz, we mentioned before, we created much more against Galatasaray rather than against Fenerbahce. That's really encouraging. Were you surprised? And do you think this is progress or is just a coincidence?
No, it's progress. It was almost as if it was what Sarri had intended, was like you working more on the defensive side on one game and on the attacking side on another game. And I do think that we have to remember their friendly games, and that is what they're being used for. They are being used to have competitive opposition and so on. But at the same time, Sarri is very intentionally working through various ideas that he's got, various tactics and systems he wants to get this team comfortable with. They've tried to build it out from the back, but we've also seen this team going long more often, trying to bring the opposition defense high up and hit the long balls. So we've seen a kind of variety of different ideas within the 2 games, which I think is encouraging. I thought too it was encouraging to see Tavares kind of being allowed to do Tavares things in the second game, because we've spoken already about what does Tavares, how does he fit in with Maurizio Sarri? It's not an obvious fit as a style of player. But in the Gala game, we certainly saw him being given more license to attack that flank, to use his pace, to use his power, and to try and create problems down there. And that's encouraging for me, because while I'm happy to see and hear that Sarri wants to improve him defensively, because we all know that's a big weakness and something that needs to improve. I think we can't do that at the expense of his attacking abilities, because that's what makes him, that's his USP, isn't it? So, yeah, I think there were kind of positives and negatives probably to take from both games. What do you think about Dele-Bashiru, though? Because I think that was probably the player that people had most close of an eye on going into this. The idea of him being the starting left centre midfielder this season.
Yeah, first of all, I don't think there is the world friendly games in Turkey, because it was a fight. Both games were a fight. I mean, Luis Torreira did a foul after 1 minute that in an official game that was directly red card, right? And we saw Tati fighting with defenders. There were a lot of clash, but terrible fouls that you usually don't see in friendly games. So it's important, because you want real tests, right? You're mentioning friendly games, you find team rather relaxed, not competing, not fighting. I thought both game, Fenerbahce and Galatasaray wanted to win that game. And so this was very interesting, important test for us. I agree with you on Nuno Tavares. We saw progress there. Where we didn't see progress, unfortunately, is Dele-Bashiru. Against Fenerbahce, against Galatasaray, I don't want to say he was invisible, but we didn't see what we wanted to see. He had a huge opportunity in the first half against Gala, and he missed it. Cancellieri was all alone in the box. You just need to pass him the ball, and we would have scored. He tried to score directly. He hit the goalkeeper. And apart from that, he didn't do that much. And Alice, I think that role, that position, is key for us, because you were mentioning Rovella and Guendouzi are not midfielder that scores a lot of goals. You need someone next to them that have a more offensive-minded type of football, that scores goal, provide assists, etc. Dele Bashiru should be that player, and he didn't provide nothing at the moment. And to be honest with you, if the season starts tomorrow, I think Vecino would have started rather than Dele Bashiru. Vecino is much readier than Dele Bashiru. The problem with Vecino is he's not getting younger. Last season, how many games did he miss? A lot, too many to trust him, to rely on him for the full season. And this is where we are missing badly the transfer market, right? We needed someone there. For example, Belayan, who played there the last 20 minutes of the Galatasaray game, I thought played better than all the other players there, right?
Yeah, Belayan is an interesting one. Now I've got his name out of my mouth. Because, yeah, obviously he's been the one who's been seemingly chosen to be more versatile this season, not Cataldi. When a month or so ago, when we talked about this, we both expected Cataldi would be the one who might move into that role. He does look, I would say he doesn't look like a natural in that position. It's worth trying him there for sure, because we don't need three playmakers really. Vecino, I agree. I think he's probably the front runner to start in that position. But I do think what will be interesting now is to see if Sarri tries something else before the competitive games start. This game against Burnley, we've read quite a few reports talking about the idea of Sarri trying a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-1-2, which would basically allow a number 10 to support the attack and to stop them being so isolated, which Castellanos could be easily in that 4-3-3, and which he was in the Fenerbahce game for sure. The problem then is, though, how does that look, and who does play there? Because there's no obvious number 10 in this team either. So even if you did want to change back to the 4-2-3-1 we used last season, would that mean using Boulaïdia there again, like we saw from so much of last season? Would that mean pushing Dele Bashiru up to be closer to the striker? Would it mean Pedro operating there, which he did last season? I'm not sure. There's kind of a few different options that we've seen at various points, but none of which are hugely naturals in that role, I guess. And that's what concerns me. I don't know if we'll see Sarri experiment with that, though, in the next game.
Plus, we are full of wingers, Alasdair. Where do they go if we switch to a 4-3-2-1 or 4-3-1-2? I mean, where does Zaccagni fit? Where does Isaacson goes, right? So I'm not convinced it's going to be that solution.
Well, I saw a bit of talk about Zaccagni being the guy who plays as a 10 in a 4-3-1-2. I don't think it's his natural role, but I would like to see him come inside more. I mean, he did used to play there for when he was at Verona, so it's not like a new position to him. But I think he likes having more space around him, and as a result, he does stick to the touchline a lot. And I think actually when he does cut inside in games, he can be quite effective and quite dangerous, but he's not doing it quite as often as I'd like, because that seems to me a more obvious way of getting players playing closer together and stopping this team being too stretched.
Well, talking about Zaccagni, let's remember that he had a surgery beginning of July, end of June, so he's getting back to shape, but he's not 100% fit. So you could see that he wasn't in his best. So, but scoring is always positive, and that's gonna provide him, I think, boost going forward. And also, probably the biggest surprise from this mini tour in Turkey is Matteo Cancellieri. I mean, 1 month ago, he was, I think, everybody was convincing that he would have left the club before the end of July. Now he's still with the club. He's been starting the last 2 games, and I think against Gala, probably man of the match for us, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I've been saying since the transfer ban, this is a huge opportunity for him, because he's got a chance to play in the position he actually likes playing in, and he's got these 100 Serie A games on his back now, and there's none of the playing as a false nine idea anymore. And with Isaksen's injury happening, it was like the stars have aligned. This is your chance. You got to take it. And I love the fact that he did. He's full of running. He's got loads of pace. He's quite a direct player as well, which is quite nice to see. I think between him on the right and Tavares on the left, you've got defenders with quite a lot to think about how you deal with that pace and directness. And yeah, obviously was involved in both goals against Gala. It was his header that was knocked in for the own goal, and then he set up the Zaccagni goal with that breakaway. So I think that's really encouraging. I think he has to be kept at this point. If the club are still, I mean, this is a slightly strange thing now, Vittorio. There's been so much talk about this for weeks now, since the transfer ban, really, about who Lazio are going to sell, because ever since that happened, and even before, it's like all this chat about we're only in Serie A this season, the squad's too big, we're going to have to get rid of at least 2 or 3 guys from the first team. And now here we are, we're into August now, we've got 2 more friendly matches, but we're fast approaching the start of the season, and they've not sold anyone else. So who would it be now? Or do you think that nobody is going to go and this will be it?
This is embarrassing. Can we say it? I mean, you don't have to think and work for buying players. You only have to think about selling players. And still, we are recording the 4th of August, and after the Primavera players and Chauna, we didn't sell any single players. This is embarrassing. This makes a sport director look awful. There are rumors that he's on holiday in Sardinia, so that will make a lot of sense, Alasdair, because he's not doing pretty much nothing. And talking about the players we need to sell, let's not forget that our old friend Kamenovic is still with us, and he's probably playing chess with Mohamed Fares, another player that is on the sell list. And at the moment, there are not even rumors about transfer deals or teams interested in those 2 players. And Toma Basic, he didn't play a single minute in both games in Turkey. Of course, he's on the sell list as well. But again, nothing's happening. Then, obviously, talking about the other players, I think Cancellieri will stay. But then what happened with Noslin? Is he on the transfer list or not? And obviously, the situation between Patrick and Gigot create issue. But I think if a good offer arrives for Isai, he's another player that Lazio is happy to sell. So there are a lot of options on the table, but our sport director is not doing it that much. So at the moment, it's all nothing's happening, and this is a problem because our transfer market is blocked. But if we don't sell players in January, we won't have that margin to do whatever we want. And I think this team needs 3 players at least on January.
At least, yeah. I mean, it's a shame because this could have been, while we've been scraping around in the last couple of weeks trying to find positives from this position we're in, one of them could have been that the club finally clears the decks. Every year we have this problem. Every year we're left with players, out of the squad who are training on their own, or desperately trying to find loan deals that don't get anywhere, or 6 months here or whatever it is. Like you say, there's nothing else to do. There's literally, you don't have to worry about signing players. I mean, I hope they're thinking about it, but you can't do it right now. So the one thing you need to be doing is getting on the phone to the agents, to the clubs, telling them what you've got, and surely somebody out there, the football world is a big world. I'm sure somebody will sign some of these guys, because it doesn't sound like much when you look at them individually, but once you group all these guys together, if you actually got them off your books and you're not paying their contracts, you've got a lot of money to put into a contract for a better player. So it's frustrating.
Alistair, we have to talk about another thing because against Fenerbahce, we saw Hila and Proskar starting. Against Galatasaray, our central defenders were Romagnoli and Marusic.
Yeah.
Now, for people who are not aware, Romagnoli won't be able to play the first two games of next season. We have Patrick out for 1 month. We don't know what's happening with Gigot. We don't have that many options against Como, right? It's Hila, Prosgard, or Marusic, right? And it looks to me, I don't know if you agree, that Marusic is going to start, right? Because Prosgard didn't convince Sarri.
Yeah, Marusic as a centre back. I mean, we had a question as we did our Q&A for Patreon users last week, and one of the questions was about who could be the most versatile, the player likeliest to play in a different position, and with the caveat that Marusic doesn't count. And so it did make me laugh that as soon as we'd had that question, the next game he's playing as a centre back. So I didn't think he did too badly. You know, I don't think he looks like a natural there. There were a couple of moments where his positioning looked slightly unusual, but I think
you're talking about Marusic or Prosgard?
Sorry, Marusic. I think he should be a kind of Hail Mary option rather than someone you're relying on, though. And Prosgard, yeah. It's hard to say. I think he's so young, and you know the world he's come from, as Karsten has outlined to us before, is so different. You know, going from the team bottom of the Danish league into fighting for a starting spot at Lazio, he's having to learn a lot pretty quickly. And so, yeah, I think that it's nice to see him getting chances, to be honest, and nice to see Sarri wanting to have a proper look at him and not ignoring him. But whether he's ready to be a starting centre back in Serie A, I'm a bit skeptical.
So it's going to be Marusic Hila. You agree with me?
Probably, yeah. I mean, if we saw Gigot play, then I would say, I think it should be Gigot. If Gigot's fit, he should be playing, right? He's a centre back and he's an experienced one, and he played a lot for us last season, and he didn't do badly. So I think, even if he's not a natural, you know, tiki-taka playing out from the back defender, he's still a centre back in a way that Marusic isn't, and Prosgard hasn't proven himself in the way that Gigot has.
Do you believe that there's something else? I mean, rumors are that it's not the problem of Gigot. It's that he's not happy that he didn't play a lot in the first friendly game, the only one he played, and that Sarri wants to let him go, and he would love to stay in Rome. And so for this reason, he's pretending to be injured. Do you buy this line, or you don't think it's the...
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I know I make it sound like we're best friends, but unfortunately, we're not actually best friends. I don't know. Yeah, it does seem strange to not have played him, but then again, if you're injured, you're injured, you know. But you would have thought, no matter what, you're still going to be using the options you've got in these preparation matches, because we have such a limited squad this season. You have to see everybody.
I don't understand. You speak so well French that I don't understand why you're not the best friend of Gigot in Rome. That's incredible.
Oui, un petit peu.
You mentioned Cancellieri saying that the injury of Isaacsen gave him a huge opportunity. I cannot see you drinking tea when it's 35 degrees in Rome. Which is simply unbelievable. Unbelievable, guys. It's so hot and he's drinking hot tea. I mean, okay.
Hey, they drink tea in India, don't they?
That's true. But
it monitors your body temperature.
But
something.
You said Cancellieri had a huge opportunity. Well, I could say even Noslin had a huge opportunity. What's happening? He didn't start against Fenerbahce. He didn't start against Galatasaray. He came in really in the last minutes of the Galatasaray game, which was a surprise, because against Fenerbahce, he didn't play that bad, right, Alasdair? You mentioned that we didn't create pretty much nothing in that game. When Noslin came in, he did something, right? He and Mendia create something close to an opportunity. So I was thinking, well, against Gala, he's going to start, right? It's not going to be Cancellieri again. Um, what's your take on Noslin? Do you think Sarri already said he is not good enough for us? Or, I mean,
I don't really understand it. I mean, I was hoping for the best with Noslin this season. You know, he spent most of his holiday time posting videos of himself working out in the gym, you know, smashing in goals on the training pitch and stuff. And I was thinking, okay, this is what he wants us to see, but this is, you know, the guy looks fired up and he's wanting to send the right messages here. And then for me, what I would have really liked to see is him being tried as a striker, because again, that's what he was originally signed to do. And between Tati and Dia, we've got two guys who are good players, but who aren't necessarily 20 goal a season players. And I just think using Noslin there seems obvious to me. And so far, he's played mostly on the right wing, I think. Has he played as a striker at all?
he played against Avellino the last, what was it, the last 10 minutes when he came in, and he created the penalty with a nice dribble. So yeah, I think you're right. The problem is, I mean, Dia just came back from the injury. You already have Dia and Castellanos there. How you're gonna make it work, right? Some of the Dia or Castellano has to be sold. I mean, we're playing only Serie A, so I don't know, but
yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, we're kind of coming full circle here, but I do think that is a real problem area and something that's going to leave Sarri with a big conundrum to solve. How he gets this team to be more dangerous in attack and not leave those players isolated as well, because I don't think they're players who, you know, can invent something out of nothing by themselves. So yeah, I don't know. Noslin's a strange one. I hoped that he might get a more fixed role, a more like a clearer idea of what he is in this team this season, because I felt like last year he suffered a bit from playing some games as striker, some games on the wing, and never really knowing what would happen next. You start here, you're on the bench here, but he still seems to be lacking a bit of clarity about what his role is in this team. I guess as a final thing, maybe because we've almost covered the entire rest of the team now, but what, after these couple of games and generally, are you thinking about the goalkeepers? Because the Mandas Providel thing has been such a big talking point, and we've seen them get time each and both get opportunities. Do you think Mandas has the upper hand, having finished last season as the number one, or do you think Providel is still Sarri's man?
I'm not sure. I don't think both goalkeeper played really well in these two games in Turkey. As we mentioned, the first goal, the first Galatasaray goal, it's Amanda's mistake. And if you saw the match, what was it? 10 minutes afterwards, he completely missed the ball with hands. So it looked to me that he wasn't 100% focused on that game. I don't know what was going on, but even Providel, when he came in, wasn't great. I think, especially with his feet, and this is a huge surprise for me, he didn't deliver the ball very well in that game. Created a lot of issue. And someone wrote to me, well, the second goal, that wasn't very difficult goal to stop. It's true that probably he doesn't see the striker, but it wasn't far away from him, and he simply doesn't move. So I don't know. I don't know if this battle between them are creating issue rather than improving them, asking them to improve the performance. Maybe they are losing confidence instead. But I don't see a clear winner at the moment, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't think we're any closer to knowing now than we were before going to Turkey. I do think Mandas had a pretty poor game against Galatasaray. I think if between the two of them, I'd say Providel has fared a little bit better. And I do get the feeling Providel is ahead of him just because of having that prior relationship with Sarri. And I do think there's something there for Sarri. He probably wants to build on a solid foundation. And for him, Provedel, Romagnoli, Casale, as hilarious as it might be, Casale was part of that, but that was his brick wall that led to that season finishing second. And if you've got two of those three still around, he's probably going to lean on them.
Yeah, one thing we have to point out is that I saw a huge difference compared to the past Sarri. We started playing long ball with our goalkeeper, and I think Mandas is very good on that. So this can be still an option for Mandas. Right? I think you remember the goal we scored against Atalanta, long ball from Mandas, then Bashiru with the header and Isaacson scoring. Lazio did it a couple of times against Galatasaray, even with Provedel. I mean, the huge opportunity Pedro had is from a long ball from Provedel. So that's something to keep in mind. But, I mean, it wouldn't be that fair if Provedel was a starter because Mandas played poorly against Galatasaray, right? But, I don't know. Do you think Sarri has to make the decision before the first game of the season, maybe after the Burnley game, the next friendly game, or do you think it has to be till the end before Lazio come, or even later than that?
Well, I mean, I don't think he needs to make, I don't think we need to see it, whoever starts against Como as being, that's it, that's the end of the discussion, he's our goalkeeper for the season. It's probably useful to have an idea of a hierarchy, but I think like any other position, if you have bad form, someone else comes and replaces you. If you're not right physically, someone comes in and replaces you. I don't think goalkeepers need to be necessarily given a special role. I think the one case where that is different is where the defense isn't used to it, and communication is a huge part of that job, and that can be problematic. But the benefit here is that the defense is the same defense, and they've played with both of those goalkeepers a lot. So when it comes to Mandas or Provedel, whoever's stepping in, their defenders in front of them will be used to that communication they're getting from either one. So I think you've got to look at that pretty positively. I think it's interesting what you said, whether this is actually becoming a problem rather than a benefit, if it's making them a bit on edge. I don't know, but this, hopefully the audition phase is the nervous part, because they probably know at the moment these are the chances to take that shirt ahead of the Como game, and hopefully once the season starts it can settle a little bit.
Alasdair, can we say that the biggest question mark thinking about Como Lazio is the right back? Who's going to start there? We know that I would say 90% Maruzic is going to play center back in that game. So the question is, who's going to play on the right without Maruzic? Hisai started against Galatasaray. Lazzari started against Fenerbahce. None of them convinced me, to be honest with you. So who do you expect?
I would expect Hisai, just because look at Como's wingers. I think if Sarri is playing Tavares, he's not going to play Lazzari. I think that's too attack-minded for Maurizio Sarri. First game of the season away from home, and especially when you're up against a Como side that has just spent 100 million euros or more, most of it on wingers. They brought in so many wide players. So that's a problem, not just for whoever starts, but then they've got guys on the bench as well who are going to come in and make an impact. So I do think that, for especially looking at that opening game, he's going to want defensive reliability as a priority. So if it's not Marisic, it will be Hisai, I think, because he's a bit more defensively dependable. But that said, I think he'll want Marisic there at all costs. I think that's going to be, I can imagine more Lazio having a model of, like, they step across to be a three-man defense while Tavares goes, and he almost can use him as a centre-back / right back as the season goes on. But it depends what's going on with the rest of the centre backs. Like you say, that is pretty complicated with the suspensions and the injuries and so on, and whatever's going on with Gigot, whether it's an injury or whatever it is.
So you still believe Gigot is going to start against Como? That's what you're saying, basically.
I don't know if we don't see him at all in the next few games, then no. But otherwise, surely yes. I mean, if he's fit, then he's gonna play because he's the only other, and he played a lot last season. He's the only other reliable centre back we've got. Do you not think so?
We were talking a couple of months ago saying Marusic is done. He has to leave Lazio, right? He's not anymore Lazio level player. And now Marusic is or starting on the right back or centre back. He's everywhere. And it's funny how every new manager comes to the club, and I don't know how Marusic always find a way to start. So I don't know what to tell you, Alasdair. I thought we should have sold Marusic 2 years ago and buy a younger, more reliable player. Let's not forget how many goals Marusic conceded last season. But
all of these guys have been given a kind of stay of execution, if you like, from the transfer ban, because the plan originally was to reinvent those roles, right? I mean, I think Hisai, Lazzari, and Marusic were all at risk, and they probably would have entertained selling a few of them, if not all of them, and replacing them with new players. But we are where we are, This is it, and the right-hand side, I think, will have to be looked at as the more stable side of the defence, because on the left you've got Tavares and Pellegrini, and Pellegrini is probably stronger in that regard than Tavares, but still not exactly Paolo Maldini when it comes to defending.
I think with the lack of quality we have, Nuno Tavares has to play and has to be not maybe offensive like he did last year, but a little bit for sure. Otherwise, we are not going to create that much opportunity. Alasdair, I think we can wrap it up here, right? We talked plenty of Fenerbahce Lazio, Galatasaray Lazio. We have still 2 friendly games before the start of the season. I think the next one is going to be the most important one, right? Against Burnley. The other one is, I don't even remember the team, but it's not a big team. And we're going to play in Rieti. I don't know why I'm not at the Stadio Olimpico.
Andromitis, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Greek team.
But I think the next one is going to be the real test. And then we're going to start. So, guys, are you ready for the next season, for the new season? I'm not, to be honest with you. I'm really concerned. I still cannot figure out where the team is going to end, how the team is going to look like. Really scared after the Fenerbahce game, a little bit more confident after the Galatasaray game, but still not easy to see where we're going to finish.
No, I think we can do our proper season preview maybe in 2 weeks, and hopefully by then we'll have an idea both of how this Lazio team is looking and also what the other teams are looking like, because there's still a lot up in the air really in terms of which players are going to end up at which teams as well. Serie A has been delightfully unpredictable in the last few years, but I think this year is probably even more so. There's a lot going on.
Well, we're going to see. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks to our Patreon. Remember, if you love our podcast and want to support us, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Membership starts at $2 a month. Thanks, Alasdair, for joining me, and we'll be back as soon as possible. Take care, guys.
Cheers.